Welcome back to part 2 of this 4-part series dedicated to sharing the history of Southwest Airlines. In the first episode of this series, I detailed how Southwest got its beginning on a cocktail napkin, how the airline was brought into legal battles with industry giants like Braniff and Continental, and how the airline finally turned a profit. If you haven't checked out part 1 yet, please do so using the video link in the description or the info cards. Without further ado, let's jump back into the not-so-brief history of Southwest Airlines. After the Airline Deregulation Act of 1978, Southwest was ready to expand beyond Texas. The airline announced plans to start interstate service in 1979 with flights to New Orleans, and federal regulators quickly approved, but not everyone was on board. Officials in Fort Worth, along with major airlines like American, now headquartered in the city, were worried that a thriving Love Field would take business away from the new DFW airport. Determined to protect DFW, Texas Congressman Jim Wright pushed through an amendment to the International Air Transportation Act of 1979, known as the Wright Amendment. The law placed strict limits on flights from Love Field. Airlines could only fly to Texas and its 4 neighboring states: Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. Flights beyond those states were only allowed on planes with 56 seats or fewer, effectively blocking mainline jets, and airlines couldn't sell connecting tickets beyond the 5-state region. At first, the restrictions didn't impact Southwest since all of its routes fit within the new limits, but instead of backing down, Southwest used the Wright Amendment to its advantage, offering low fares to smaller airports in the region, while legacy carriers charged sky-high prices. By 1979, Southwest had grown to 11 Texas cities and launched its first out-of-state route, Houston to New Orleans. In 1984, Southwest made a big move. It became the launch customer for the Boeing 737-300. On November 30th, the airline took delivery of its first one, naming it Kitty Hawk. Over the years, Southwest would become the largest operator of the 737-300, a workhorse that helped fuel its expansion. But while the fleet was growing, Southwest still had to navigate the restrictions of the Wright Amendment. In 1985, Dallas, Fort Worth, and DFW Airport tried to block Continental Airlines from operating at Love Field, arguing that its ability to sell connecting tickets violated the law. However, the U.S. Department of Transportation ruled that as long as airlines weren't actively promoting connections, passengers could book separate tickets to reach their destinations. This loophole worked in Southwest's favor. Savvy travelers could fly from Dallas to a nearby state and then book a separate ticket to any city Southwest served, bypassing the restrictions. That same year, Southwest made a bold acquisition, buying struggling carrier Muse Air for $60.5 million. It rebranded the airline as Transtar, running it as a separate operation. But after a fierce fare war with Frank Lorenzo's Texas Air, Southwest cut its losses, selling Transtar's assets back to Lorenzo in 1987. As Southwest continued to expand, so did its headquarters. In 1990, the airline moved into a new $15 million facility near Love Field, growing it further in 1995 and again in 1996 with a $30 million expansion. That included a new pilot training center and additional parking, bringing Southwest's total leasehold at Love Field to 24 acres. The airline also found creative ways to cut costs. In 1990, Southwest registered its planes in Houston to take advantage of tax laws while keeping its headquarters in Dallas, and in 1993, it acquired Morris Air, a Salt Lake City-based carrier, for $134 million. Morris Air was founded in 1984 by June Morris, who had already made waves in the travel industry with her travel agency, Morris Travel. Modeled after Southwest Airlines itself, Morris Air pioneered budget-friendly flights across the West Coast, Hawaii, and Alaska. It became known for its innovative approach, including the introduction of e-tickets, an industry first. By 1993, it operated 1,000 weekly flights to 28 destinations. In 1994, Southwest acquired Morris Air, expanding its network and adopting its ticketless travel system. Morris joined Southwest's board of directors, solidifying her legacy in aviation history. This move expanded Southwest's network into the Pacific Northwest, and one of Morris Air's founders, David Neilman, briefly worked with Southwest before going on to start WestJet and JetBlue, 2 future competitors. In 1995, Southwest launched its first website, iflyswa.com, later becoming southwest.com. By 2006, 70% of all flight bookings came through the site, making it the #1 airline website in terms of online revenue. Another key to Southwest's success? Fuel hedging. The airline made strategic bets on fuel prices, insulating itself from volatility and giving it a huge cost advantage over competitors. While some analysts debated whether it was speculation rather than risk management, there was no arguing with the results. Southwest's fuel strategy helped keep it profitable, even when other airlines struggled. By 1997, Southwest had invested $47 million expanding its Love Field facilities. That same year, the airline made its first international partnership, teaming up with Iceland Air to offer joint fares and coordinated schedules connecting U.S. travelers to Europe via Baltimore. By the mid 1990s, some airlines were looking for ways to work around the Wright Amendment. One of them was Legend Airlines, a startup that proposed long haul flights from Love Field using McDonnell Douglas DC 9s, modified with just 56 seats to comply with the law. But in 1996, the U.S. Department of Transportation ruled that the restriction applied to the aircraft's original design capacity, not just the number of seats installed. That decision stalled Legend's plans, prompting them to push for a change in the law. With the help of Senator Richard Shelby of Alabama, Legend backed a new amendment that Congress passed in 1997. The Shelby Amendment allowed unrestricted flights to Alabama, Kansas, and Mississippi, while also permitting nationwide flights on aircraft reconfigured to 56 seats. Southwest, however, didn't see enough demand to expand into these new states. But others did. Continental Express launched flights from Love Field to Houston in 1998 with plans for interstate service once regulations allowed. By April 5, 2000, Legend Airlines finally began its long-haul operations. Soon, American, Continental Express, and Delta's regional partner Atlantic Southeast Airlines followed suit. But Southwest, which didn't operate a 56-seat aircraft, was left out. The very loophole the Legend fought for had worked against Southwest. By 2004, though, Southwest was ready to fight back. The airline began lobbying for a full repeal of the Wright Amendment. A year later, Congress made its first change, adding Missouri to the list of permitted states, allowing Southwest to launch flights to St. Louis and Kansas City in December 2005. Then, in June 2006, Southwest, Dallas, Fort Worth, DFW airports, and American Airlines struck a deal. The Wright Amendment would be repealed, but Love Field's gates would be permanently capped at 20. Southwest and American would get preferential leases on the remaining gates. Until 2025, all international flights in the Dallas-Fort Worth area would operate exclusively from DFW Airport. And if Southwest or any partner airline flew from another airport within 80 miles of Love Field, Southwest would have to give up gates at Love Field. Congress passed the bill on September 29, 2006, and President George W. Bush signed it into law on October 13th. Just 3 days later, Southwest started selling tickets under the new law, which immediately eliminated restrictions on through ticketing and promised nationwide service within 8 years. By 2014, Love Field's gates reshuffled again. American had to give up 2 gates as a part of its merger with U.S. Airways, and Virgin America took over the lease. Then, on October 13, 2014, the Wright Amendment finally came to an end. On March 5, 2000, Southwest Airlines Flight 1455, a Boeing 737-300, overran the runway while landing at Burbank Airport in California. The aircraft skidded across the street and came to a stop at a Chevron gas station. Out of 137 passengers and 5 crew members, 2 passengers suffered serious injuries, while the captain and 41 others sustained minor injuries. The plane itself was badly damaged and later written off, making this the first major accident in Southwest's 29-year history. Investigators attributed the incident primarily to pilot error, as the aircraft landed at an excessive speed, with air traffic control mistakes also cited as a contributing factor. In January of 2007, Southwest ended its codeshare agreement with Iceland Air after the airline discontinued its Baltimore to Keflavik route. By 2008, Southwest was focusing on both operational improvements and strategic expansion. The airline partnered with Pratt & Whitney to introduce the EcoPower water pressure washing system, which helped clean engine turbine blades while aircraft were parked at the gate. This system was estimated to improve fuel efficiency by 1.9%. That same year, Southwest purchased assets from the bankrupt ATA Airlines for $7.5 million, primarily to gain ATA's operating certificate and landing slots at New York's LaGuardia Airport. While there was speculation that former ATA employees might be offered positions, the deal ultimately did not include aircraft, facilities, or direct employee transfers. When ATA ceased operations in April 2008, it also ended its codeshare agreement with Southwest, which had provided over 70 weekly flights to Hawaii from Southwest focus cities. However, 2008 also brought serious regulatory challenges. In March, FAA inspectors reported that Southwest had allowed 117 aircraft to fly without required safety inspections, in some cases up to 30 months past their deadline. The FAA claimed that thousands of passengers had flown on aircraft deemed unsafe by federal standards. As a result, Southwest voluntarily grounded 44 aircraft for further inspection. The airline faced a $10.2 million fine, and reports suggested that FAA officials may have overlooked the violations to avoid disrupting Southwest's operations. After a year of negotiations, Southwest agreed to pay a reduced fine of $7.5 million in 2009 with a 2-year deadline for the payment. During this period, Southwest also pursued new codeshare partnerships and acquisition opportunities. In July 2008, the airline announced a codeshare agreement with WestJet, but economic conditions led to its cancellation in April of 2010. In November 2008, Southwest signed a codeshare deal with Mexican low-cost carrier Volaris, allowing Southwest to sell tickets on Volaris flights. In July 2009, Southwest bid $113.6 million to acquire Frontier Airlines, planning to operate it separately before integrating it into its all-Boeing 737 fleet. However, after losing the initial bid to Republic Airways Holdings, Southwest chose not to pursue arbitration with pilots' unions and withdrew from the deal. In August of 2009, the FAA launched another investigation into Southwest, this time for installing unapproved parts on about 10% of its fleet. While the FAA determined the parts did not pose an immediate safety risk, Southwest was given until December 24, 2009 to replace them with FAA-approved components. From the initial challenges faced by the Wright Amendment, Southwest knew it was never going to give up. During this time period, the airline fought through adversity, quickly turning into a passenger favorite and a key player in the U.S. aviation industry. Thanks for watching this episode of A Brief History. If you enjoyed it, make sure to check out the other episodes in this series and stay tuned for part 3 of Southwest's Brief History on Wednesday, when I dive into the modern Southwest Airlines as we know it today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.